Deloitte's Indirect Tax Lifecycle video series. On our second episode, we discussed compliance with Brian Little, and on today's episode, we're going to discuss exposure and remediation with Marcy Stoltz. Hi, Marcy. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Kirsten. Good to see you.
Before we jump in, can you share with us a little bit about your role at Deloitte?
Absolutely. So, hi, everyone. I'm Marcy Stoltz. I'm a tax principal in our Houston indirect tax practice. And as an indirect tax leader, my focus is to help our clients with their indirect tax needs and issues related to non-payments, overpayments, and other areas where there could be indirect tax implications.
On our previous episodes, we talked about nexus, sourcing, classification, and taxability, and also compliance. And even though sometimes companies can focus on getting all of that right, they can still have issues with exposure and remediation. So can you tell us a little bit about that, Marcy?
So exposure occurs when a client has not been remitting enough tax to specific jurisdictions. And exposure is usually identified in one of 5 ways. The most common is going to be indirect tax audits. The other would be a health check or diagnostic, especially when one's proactively looking to identify areas where they either overpaid or underpaid taxes. Also, during an audit of their vendors or their customers, which is commonly referred to as a spinoff audit. The 4th way is through due diligence, usually during an M&A due diligence. And then the 5th is when there are regs and statute changes that impact the overall collection responsibilities.
There's all these different ways that companies can have exposure. Can you talk a little bit about potential ways to remediate this exposure or these underpayments?
The most common, or I think one of the best routes to go, is VDAs, which is voluntary disclosure agreements. It's a proactive route to remediate underpayments, usually only available if clients haven't already been notified by the jurisdiction. And in a VDA, a client voluntarily comes forward to report underpaid tax. In exchange, a jurisdiction will either waive penalties and sometimes interest, as well as limiting the look-back period.
I know a lot of times companies put a significant amount of effort to understand what their exposures may be, but sometimes they don't know what they don't know. And these items are identified on audit. If a client has exposure that's identified on an audit, what happens next?
When audits are initiated by the state, they're retroactive. So they go back usually 3 to 4 years. And auditors are going to look at your historic purchases and sales to determine if you've been paying the right amount of tax, mainly with a focus on underpayments, right? Because they're also trying to generate revenue for the states. And then most audit assessments, they'll include not only the tax, but also the tax that was underpaid, but also the penalties and interest.
I know that you work with clients all of the time in this area, Marcy. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes Deloitte unique in this area?
Of course, yeah. I think it's our deep industry knowledge, as well as the fact that we have so many Deloitte specialists that have a lot of experience working with state tax departments. So we're very familiar with their processes and their procedures. We also advise our clients nationwide, so they appreciate that we're thinking about their indirect tax needs from a multi-state standpoint.
And Marcy, can you share with us an overview of Deloitte's broad approach to indirect taxes and what you think makes it special?
As a full service practice, our indirect tax professionals, they focus on addressing a broad range of indirect tax issues and needs, starting with understanding the client's indirect tax footprint to addressing their taxability and sourcing needs. And they also help them analyze if tax is being paid or charged correctly. We're also here to help our clients with their compliance and audits, as well as identifying refunds to offset any assessments. But one of our main goals is to help our clients improve their processes to stop future errors, which to me is probably one of our biggest differentiators. And then also our overall broad-based approach, deep experience, that's what really has clients seeking us as trusted advisors.
Amazing, as always. Thank you so much, Marcy. Coming up in our 4th episode of the Indirect Tax Lifecycle video series, we'll be discussing process reviews. See you there. Thanks.